Is it okay for candidates to evolve on a position over a period of years?
I think it's perfectly acceptable. I think most people need to rethink their positions over time as facts change. But they deserve to explain to the people clearly what she has failed to do. And it's not just a change in position. These are hard positions on which she has actually taken policy action, both as a vice president, an attorney general, and a U.S. senator. And simply saying she doesn't believe that anymore is not a sufficient explanation on core issues that affect costs for Americans, healthcare for Americans, taxation for Americans, including taxes on unrealized gains, on which she has not yet changed her position.
That's Vivek Ramaswamy calmly dismantling a sour-faced CNN reporter who may have just realized that she's in over her head. Welcome to Nerk News, I'm Nerkish, and exhausted liberal women in establishment media have really been doing their best to blindly run cover for Kamala Harris and paint her as some sort of moderate. Unfortunately for them, no one is buying it, and the right has people like Vivek to expertly dismantle their weak talking points.
You brought up some claims about Kamala Harris. I want to finish that discussion. She said she didn't favor a ban on fracking now. The reality is she was one of the strongest proponents of that ban, so much so that when she was in California, she sued the Obama administration over granting fracking permits. She didn't just favor the abolition of private health insurance. She was a co-sponsor of the bill with Bernie Sanders as a U.S. Senator for Medicare for All for Americans. The reality is, when you think about the Green New Deal, she was the chief proponent, not just as a co-sponsor of the legislation, but going further and saying she would end the filibuster in the Senate to ram that through. So the reality is she can say what she wants to say now. Those are actions she has taken. Is someone allowed to evolve? Of course they are. But she deserves to explain exactly why she's changed those positions, exactly what her position is. If it's not a ban on fracking, what exactly is it? What exactly is her health care plan if she no longer favors abolishing private health insurance, which just 4 short years ago when she ran for president, she did? And that's the kind of scrutiny that's been missing. I think Donald Trump has received plenty of scrutiny, and I give credit to him for sitting for hostile interviews that Kamala Harris has not.
You know, I almost feel bad for this lady. She genuinely seems exhausted and unable to keep up with Vivek. Just go back and watch her reactions during this whole thing. Like the majority of these political hacks, she can barely hide her disdain for what he's saying, and you could see her attempting to form her next gotcha question in real time as he's speaking, which is why she inevitably shifted to their new favorite trick this election cycle, trying to pin Republicans on the life issue.
That is different than what this ballot measure accomplishes, and I know you know that, Kate. This ballot measure would, through its vague crafting, would allow abortions far after 6 weeks, arguably under the interpretation of some legal scholars, all the way up to the point of birth. He's against that, and that's been a consistent position as well. So I do think this attempt by Democrats, and it's politics, so you'd expect it, to conflate an opposition to a 6-week ban with somehow being in favor of a ballot measure that actually would allow for far more than that is, I think, sophistry. And the job of voters, I hope they do it, is to see through that, even if it's served up to them in the media. You can't conflate those two things, and I don't think that's an inconsistency, with all due respect.
Things you also can't conflate is on the issue of, and I've heard this time and again, of accusing, of saying that Democrats, and putting this on Kamala Harris, is, saying that they're going to be able to, as you mentioned, up to the point of birth, or execute a baby after birth, that you do agree that is illegal.
That's
not an issue.
Is and should be illegal, except for when you look at the vaguely drafted statutes that are now expanding in these ballot measures. And I think that's the debate we ought to be having in this country, is an honest debate at the state level. And where I give Donald Trump a lot of credit, this was my position during the presidential campaign as well, is that this is an issue for the states in a post-Dobbs world. I think Roe was correctly overturned. I think most Republicans agree on that. This is now an issue for the states. And I know that Democrats want to make this a core issue, but the reality is it's not a presidential issue anymore. It belongs to the states. Kamala Harris has wrongly characterized and wrongfully stated, I think in this case I'd call it an outright lie, saying Donald Trump would sign a federal abortion ban when he's been clear that he's against a federal position on this issue. And I think voters deserve that kind of clarity.
This is something we've seen before, but I've really got to say that it's astounding how befuddled these shills are by an issue going back to the states. There is absolutely nothing liberals detest more than state sovereignty on any level. Heck, they can barely tolerate national sovereignty. I mean, you've seen this in states like Florida and Georgia in the past, whenever they decide to vote on something that affects them, but isn't popular with the ruling elites or the national status quo. Every time that happens, liberals in New York and California immediately try to punish those states or push punitive measures on them, which is a little funny considering that Democrats are always talking about the importance of democracy and voting locally. It kind of gives you a glimpse at why they're so against things like the Electoral College. But let me know what you think. Will Vivek ever be invited back on CNN, or did he just ruin his chances? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. That stuff really does help us out. Until then, this has been Nerk News. Thanks for watching. Bye!